listening to Proof Text, a Glossa House podcast by Dr. T. Michael W. Halcomb, Dr. Frederick J. Long, Dr. Mario Melendez, Dr. Jennifer Noonan, and J. M. Smith. Welcome and enjoy.
Shalom and welcome to this episode of SLA Insights. My name is Dr. Jennifer Noonan, and we're continuing our discussion of input, specifically comprehensible input, and how it is essential for language acquisition, but it is not necessarily sufficient. We've talked about increasing the quantity of comprehensible input, and now I want to talk in these next few episodes about increasing the quality. I did a brief overview in the previous episode, but we're going to look at some specific examples today and then in the next couple episodes. And the reason we want to increase the quality of comprehensible input is because students have limited amount of attentional resources, limited working memory. And so even though they may be getting input that is comprehensible, they may not be picking up everything you want them to pick up or everything they need to pick up. Just because it's in the input does not mean they're getting intake for further development in their inner developing system. So today, the specific approach for increasing the quality of comprehensible input is what's called input enhancement. Now, it's just like it sounds. You enhance the input in some way in order to draw attention to the target item. So, for example, if we're going to do spoken input, you might use emphasis, like, I am building a tower with Legos, or something like that, to draw attention to that ing ending. Or maybe intonation, may I have another cookie? Or you might use repetition. We went to the store. We went to the store. Again, drawing attention to that input and the specific target item in the input to make sure that your student is picking it up, drawing it into their inner language for further development and hopefully acquisition. Otherwise, it may just pass them right by. Now, for written input, I'm going to show you a couple examples, sharing my screen here. All right, so here I have on the screen three different examples, three different languages. The example at the top, for those of you who are just listening and not also watching, is Latin, honora patrem et matrem. Now, you don't have to necessarily know Latin to have a pretty good idea of what that's saying. And so it would be really easy to just read over it and ignore the case endings. So what I've done is I've changed the case endings on patrem and matrem so that they're in blue, so that they stand out in the input. And so the student can recognize, oh, there's something going on here. There's something different. These are in a different form than the standard lexical form. And so to draw their attention to it so they don't just breeze through it, because you could read it and understand it without understanding the case endings. But if you really want them to internalize and acquire those case endings, you may need to draw attention to them, especially for those whose native language, like English, does not use case endings. Now, in the second example, in Greek, I have here a quote, and I've put in italics one word, aleis, fisherman. And so I did that because in this example, hypothetical situation, where this may be the new vocabulary item, and you want to draw the learner's attention to that item to be sure they notice it and hopefully acquire it. Again, input enhancement. We're enhancing the input in some way so as to draw attention to the thing we want the students to notice. Now, in the last example, it's a Hebrew example, and I have highlighted all of the narrative preterites, all the sequential forms. Not all of them are narrative preterites. And so with that, I'm showing the students the backbone. Here's what we look for with the input. and hopefully with discourse analysis to get the students to notice, okay, here's the backbone of this narrative. So we want to focus in on the narrative preterite, and you might even have them look at just those forms, translate them or work with them, act them out, whatever it is, and then start filling in with the added words in between. So helping them notice how that information is structured. And if I can go back and correct myself, one of the forms was actually a noun that had a vav on it, and that's a disjunctive. And so also drawing attention to that form to help them see, okay, this is how the narrative, this is the flow. Oh, wait, here's a sidebar. So these are examples of input enhancement, and it's one way of increasing the quality of comprehensible input. Again, we're manipulating the input in some way by enhancing it to make items more salient, help the students notice them, help them process them. So with spoken input, we can use voice inflection or repetition. With written input, color, font, highlighting, that kind of a thing, to again make those elements more salient so the student can say, oh, okay, I need to pay attention to this, and hopefully give them a better chance at acquiring it. So that's all for today, input enhancement. In upcoming episodes, I'm going to talk about input flood, and then the following episode, probably more than one episode, I'm going to cover structured input in the context of what's known as processing instruction. So I hope you can join me. Have a great week.
Interested in growing your ancient language skills but not sure where to start? Glossa House can help. From illustrated readers and short stories to lexicons and grammars, Glossa House offers a variety of resources for beginning, intermediate, and experienced ancient language learners. Head to glossahouse.com today. Glossa House, language resources for the global community.